From GAN Studios in Philadelphia, it's Game All Night, starring Chris Whitpan. This week, Chris and Dan welcome special guest, Chris Anderson of the Board Game Workshop.
Okay. There we go. All right. You ready?
No.
All right. Hello and welcome to Game All Night. I'm your host, Chris Whitpan, and joined sometimes, occasionally, by people who get to go to Galaxy's Edge himself. I had to give Dan off last week, so he's back, however. Dan, how's it going tonight?
4 words for you. Rise of the Resistance.
Rise of the Resistance. Is it really better than Star Tours? Because that's what they took out for this.
In fact, Star Tours is still there. It's still the same location. The new section is all new, so they are compatible. They're both there, but yes, it is a bit of an upgrade from Star Tours.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I obviously didn't have you to serve me last week, but what did you get for us this week?
We're going local again to celebrate my return here. You know, I like to represent our local brewery. So this one's out of Yardley, Pennsylvania. So Bucks County, which is actually my roots. That's where I grew up. And you are drinking of Hops and Clouds from Vault Brewing. It's not a very exciting can, by the way. It's just sort of a green, but that's their hazy IPA, their New England style IPA. How are you finding that?
I find it very good. It's nice and juicy. Like the little smaller breweries are actually starting to really get some decent hop profiles on them.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. And then I have Bear Hug, which is their Nitro Oatmeal Stout.
Ooh.
And this is real reminiscent to me of like a high chocolate profile, almost like maybe not quite like Brooklyn's chocolate stout. Maybe not quite that intense, but still, almost desserty with smooth, heavy body and a real roasty chocolate flavor. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Awesome. Well, you get a lot of good flavors out of the oatmeal, so you can't go wrong with that. Excellent. Well, today we are going to be joined by Mr. Chris Anderson of the Board Game Workshop. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, great. So, what are you drinking today? Are you drinking anything? I saw you had a bottle earlier. Is it anything fancy, adulty?
I've got some Mountain Dew Code Red because I need to stay awake. Okay.
Is it late where you are?
Yeah, it's past 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's definitely late for me. But surely I jest. So, Chris, what do you do in the board game space? If somebody were to, approach you on an elevator and ask what you're doing here, what would the elevator pitch be?
I'm probably going up or down floors if I'm on an elevator.
Oh, yeah, probably. Unless they pull the GIS NCIS thing where they pull the thing, and then you're going to be worried on a whole nother level.
So I'm a board game designer. I've got a couple games published with Button Shy, and I also run my podcast, The Board Game Workshop, which I started a little more than 3 years ago now. And off of the podcast, I started a design contest and a design day. So trying to spread out from there, and generally just around the board game world and helping people out with game design.
Awesome. So I find it funny because you are the second person in a row, because Elizabeth Hargrave, one of the things that she just did was obviously design for Button Shy with Tussie Mussy. So I like that we have some Button Shy family approach here going on. How important is the small indie publisher like Button Shy to the gaming community? Like, how much of a purpose are they really serving with these quick little easy games, constant design contests? What is that bringing to us?
I think, especially the smaller companies, Button Shy in particular, because they do produce so many games, they're really letting a lot of new designers into the space. Big companies can only produce so much, and it's great, and they produce very high quality games, but you got to start somewhere, and you're not, if you're Elizabeth Hargrave, you start with Wingspan, but other people have to start at smaller games and move their way up. So I think all the indie publishers give a chance for smaller designers to start out, and also more unique off-the-wall games to get a chance. I mean, you see a lot of innovative things from smaller companies because they don't have to meet their sales quotas or anything. They have a lot of freedom. Worst case, they just stop being a publisher, which isn't that much if it's just a side hobby for you.
Right. Now, on that topic, the 18 card mantra that makes Button Shy what it is how hard is it to design with that big of a limitation? Do you find it freeing or do you find it hard?
It's an interesting question. So from the outside, when you first start it, you think, oh, this is nearly impossible. What can you do with 18 cards? But the whole reason I got into designing with Button Shy is they had their first contest a couple years ago. I saw that. I was a new designer, hadn't had anything published yet. So I was like, oh, I'll try something out. I ended up submitting 10 games to that contest.
Wow.
So there is some design space. I'm actually the reason that they only allow one entry per person now. So that's a fun trivia bit. But now, last year, for the second half of the year, they had monthly design contests on their Discord. And some of the bigger ones were getting like 60 or 70 entries. So there's actually a massive amount of design space in the 18 cards, which surprises a lot of people when they get into it. But to a degree, once you start, you realize how much you can do. And the restriction breeds a lot of creativity.
Interesting. So what are, like, if you submit that much, I got to ask, because I always find it interesting, what are some of the failed ones that you kind of look back and go, yeah, that probably made sense? Is there any in there that just kind of go, yeah, it wasn't as good as I thought at the time, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, none of them even got into the finals for that, although In Vino Morte was in that, and it ended up getting published, because it's actually better than people think when they look at it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there's a lot of crap. I didn't test a lot of stuff that I put in because it's 10 games. It's a lot of work. One of them I'm developing into a more full game. It was called Comic Auction. Now it's Auction Comics, and that's turning into a pretty nice 60-card game. But 18 was too restrictive for it. But I had one about debt management that was just depressing and didn't work very well.
Yeah, I can't imagine why debt management wouldn't be fun. That just
It's an important life lesson, though.
Unfortunately, very much so. Very much so. So, what was the let's go back 3 years when you started the board game workshop? Where was the impetus for that? Was it just to kind of help other people out? Was it just kind of put your theories out there? Where did that really come from?
So I was in a conversation with, why am I blanking on his last name now? Oh man, Tony from Breaking Into Board Games. Yeah, blanking on his last name, Bearded Rogue, and Daniel Newman. And we were talking on Twitter about, I work in video professionally. I run a TV studio at high school, so I have access to a lot of equipment, a lifetime of knowledge of producing video. So I thought I should produce some sort of video content. We were talking about things, and it seemed like there'd be a useful space for people to kind of demo and workshop people's game designs as a video show. That was the initial idea. I had the idea in the summer of, I want to say 20, although I get the years wrong sometimes when I talk about this, so don't quote me. But so I had the idea over the summer. I was like, oh, I can work on it over the summer. Like I said, I work at a high school, so I have a lot of downtime in the summer. And I did not get to it in the summer. Producing video, as you probably know, is difficult. Takes a lot of setup, a lot of work. Getting people's games for the show I had in mind was going to be pretty time-consuming.
Okay.
So I ended up changing it to a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts, like an absurd amount of podcasts. So I was used to the podcast format. And I started the show as just a short interview show, like 15-minute interviews. I had a couple people on and recorded in December, released it in January the next year, so that was the start. And I started off doing monthly 15-minute interviews. And then after a few episodes, maybe 6 months or something, I decided that a lot of people in the podcast space are doing interviews, and they're doing them very well. And I didn't feel I was adding anything particularly useful or new to the space. So I decided to switch it to roundtable discussions about game design, which there's a couple shows doing that, but I thought we could always use more for that. So I started having groups of people on, and we would discuss just a general topic or a mechanic, and it's kind of continued like that up until recently.
Cool. So if you were to nail down kind of the mission of the show at this point, what do you think you're trying to deliver to your target audience? What is the message you want to get across? What is the aid you want to give?
So right now it's spreading information about game creation. So we have talks that dig into design, so talking about mechanics, how to use it. We have talks about running Kickstarters. We have talks about starting a business. And I haven't yet talked to manufacturers, although it's something I definitely want to get to at some point.
Sure.
But I'm trying to cover all aspects of game creation. But it mostly focuses on design because that's what I have the most experience with.
Now, are you thinking to do these small indie publishers? Because that's probably, like you say, not everybody's Elizabeth Hargrave. They're not going to bump into Jamie Stegmaier and just blow up the entire world in one shot. They're probably going to be more independent publishers. So you're aiming for, say, Jason from Button Shy, or even Carla from Weird Giraffes, or the smaller in-house productions.
As far as guests?
Yeah.
Jason's been on a few times. Carla's been on a bunch. She was actually just on my most recent show to talk about her newest Kickstarter release. It does focus more on the indie side partially that's confidence getting bigger guests on, and part of it's scheduling, because bigger companies are a lot harder to get on the show. But I did a series on elegant game design that was based off an article I wrote. And for that, I was really reaching out to bigger names to try and get a lot of people onto that. So for that one, I had a bunch of people, and I'm not going to remember all of them, but John Gilmore on that, Jamie Stegmaier, Jeff Engelstein, Sen Fung Lim, and a bunch of others that I cannot remember offhand. But I tried to get a lot of big names that really knew their stuff to really dig into that topic.
Awesome. Sounds like you spend a lot of time kind of curating each episode to tailor it to the discussion you're going to do.
Yeah, it's a good amount of work to set it up, and then a lot more editing.
Yeah, scheduling is probably the single biggest difficulty when you're trying to coordinate things with people. And
yes, it is.
Don't even get me started about Australia, because now I'm recording tomorrow when I record there. It's very confusing. If it wasn't for Google Calendar, I would never be able to do anybody outside of 3 time zones. It would just never happen.
You only have one guest at a time, though, right?
Most of the time. Occasionally we'll do 2. We had 5 on not that long ago. It was a bit of a challenge, but we made it work.
Yeah. I usually have 3 on all my shows, and they span time zones. One time we had Calvin Wong, who's 12 hours off, so that's some work.
Wow. Yeah, so it's not as easy. I'm glad you're kind of overcoming those hurdles, because they're definitely interesting topics and things that people need to talk about. So it's awesome that you're able to make it happen. So what kind of got you into doing game design in the first place? Is it something you've been wanting to do? Is it just something that kind of cropped out of the hobby in general?
So it actually popped up really suddenly. I've been a gamer my entire life, playing board games with my brothers when I was a kid. I got into Magic in middle school and played that up till now. I don't have as much time being an adult, but then I went over a friend's house to play some games one day, and I played hobby board games here and there. I had played Carcassonne, but didn't know about the whole hobby. Right. And then he invited me over. You want to play some game? I'm like, sure, I love games. He's like, oh, we're going to play Eclipse. Never heard of it. And we played Eclipse, and it was an amazing experience. I still love Eclipse as a game, and it was very elegant the way a lot of the systems are designed. It's still a very large, massive game, but the way it deals with a lot of the information is very smooth, and I hadn't really seen anything like that before. So it was a great experience and kind of got me digging into the hobby, but it was also what inspired me to try and design my own game. The first one was terrible, and I don't really remember the specifics of it, but it got me into the hobby almost immediately, and I started watching or listening to every podcast I could find, and started going on Board Game Geek and just got into design before I even knew other designers or all of the systems that I now take advantage of with meetups and podcasts and shows, but I jumped in full bore right away.
Now, did you find, because I think that's a natural tendency. For instance, when I started gaming with my friends in the basement, and we started with our Carcassonne or Munchkin, whatever it was that came out that night, there's part of you that goes, oh, I can design a game. I can do this. I want to make it about something I love, And then I started, actually making papers and started pushing it around. And then you go to other people and you realize that everything, I don't want to say everything's been done, but a lot of things have been done. And when you're kind of operating in that initial vacuum, because, I probably hadn't even seen like a 10% of the entire mechanics of the world yet. So I'm like, I had no idea, that's like going to a sandbox and thinking that the teaspoon you brought was the best tool ever. And then the girl next to you has like a pail and is building a castle. It's like,
yeah,
it's a completely different ball of wax. I unfortunately, or fortunately for the gaming world, was disheartened enough not to do it, but you weren't, thankfully. So that's a good thing.
Well, some people get discouraged when they find out it wasn't great. Other people see that pail and like, well, man, I want a pail now. And you get the pail, and then you get the bulldozer, and before you know it, you have a whole construction company.
Yeah, I'm more about let's logistically bring in the sand truck, and then we'll make it better that way. So, but that's impressive that you didn't get scared off, but rather you got sucked in by Eclipse. For me, it was Solkin and Power Grid were the two that kind of, when I actually ventured out into the world of gaming and played like something that was beyond tabletop and whatnot, then that was it. And I was like, wow, there's just so many buttons and levers to push and pull in this. It was downright amazing. I can't imagine that Eclipse was anything less of mind-boggling at that time.
Oh, definitely. But that was the excitement, all the things you can still learn.
Right. And also, if you play Master of Orion, you're kind of used to the tech tree and leveling up individual things, so it's not a far stretch for us from our computer days, but it still is very, very, it's a big game. That's impressive. All right. Well, you know what? I think this is a great moment in any event to take a pause, and we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear what hopefully is a funny pun from Patrick. And then we're going to come back because I want to talk about some of the other things that have kind of blossomed out of, the Board Game Workshop and how it's kind of making its way in the gaming world today. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back after this.
Pontifications with Patrick Hillier.
I wanted to find the man who stole my toilet seat, but I have nothing to go on.
All right, and welcome back, everyone. I am joined by Chris Anderson of the Board Game Workshop, and we're going to get into we got into the podcast and where the origins of that came from, but the Board Game Workshop is a lot more than that. It really is. It's not just about helping people verbally. You've put together some pretty cool stuff. So why don't you tell me a little bit about like the Board Game Workshop? You have many aspects to it. Let's start with the design contest, because that's probably the single biggest thing that I've seen that you end up doing every year.
Yeah, I think it has a bigger reach than the podcast itself. So some of the entries might not even know there is a podcast. But yeah, so the design contest actually started 2018. It was early August. I had not set up a guest for an episode or a topic for an episode, and I was very, very strict with myself about releasing on time consistently every second Wednesday. And I decided, I will announce a design contest. I decided this 6 days before the show aired. So I had 6 days to write all the rules for a design contest. I had entered some, I had judged some, so I had some background. I wasn't going in completely blind. But yeah, I threw the design contest together in a week and then announced it. I thought, we'll get some people. I put up, it was $200 in prizes for the top 5 entries. Basic premise, you submit some games. We watch them, give feedback, have a couple rounds to cut it down to less and less people. I was expecting, if it was good, 400 entries. We got 87 entries that first year.
Okay.
And that was overwhelming. So, and then also just grabbing people to be judges. I'm looking at my numbers now, and it looks like we had 71 different judge emails that first year, which some people use one email and judge as a couple, so it's hard to get exact numbers on the number of people.
Sure.
But we ended up getting a lot of judges for that. A lot of people helped out. I mean, I couldn't have done it without all those judges. 87 games is a lot. And that first year we managed to get 10 judges on each game in round 1. So it went amazingly well. We got great feedback from the entrants. We got great feedback from the judges. Everyone really enjoyed it. So that was very positive for something thrown together kind of last minute. And yeah, that's where it began.
Awesome. So fast forward to this year, and things are already underway. I know because I'm a judge. At least I try to play one on TV. And it's not, I don't think it's like an easy, we'll just make a game and submit it, because you actually put a lot of, you give them a lot of assignments that they have to do to kind of reach each level. And do you want to talk a little bit about the progression of when somebody first enters to what they end up needing to show towards the end of the contest?
Sure. So this 2020 will be the 3rd year for it. Round 1, the main thing is you submit a 2-minute video. 2 minute is the maximum, and that has gotten a lot of pushback from people over the years. They want more time. 2-minute video is a very difficult thing to produce. It's actually harder to make short videos than long videos, especially when you're trying to explain something. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I've been a judge in other contests, and most contests require videos in the first round because it's just not feasible to have people send in all their games for a large group. Sure. But they're usually 5-minute limits or 10-minute limits. And what I found personally from trying to judge that is it takes a long time to watch a 10-minute video and then give feedback. And because it takes a long time, your judges aren't looking at as many games. So my goal, to be different again, to try and bring something unique to the space, was to make judging really simple. So I decided 2-minute videos was going to be the thing. So you could do a short description and a 2-minute video, and that's what judges would look at, and they'd give you feedback. And it's designed to be a pitch, so you're not trying to give a full playthrough. You're trying to get across kind of the high-level idea of your game. Is it exciting? And then you'll get some judge feedback on that and scoring. If you manage to get into the top 20 out of the entries in round 1, you move on to round 2. In round 2, you submit your full rules and how to play video up to 15 minutes long. So you get a lot more time, and you're trying to the video doesn't have to explain in detail everything about the game, but it should definitely give enough that people could start playing with that and the rules and give them a good overview of how things work. And then the top 5 from round 2 move on to round 3. And round 3 is where you have to send a physical prototype to me, and we get together. So this past year in 2019, I ended up having 3 different events where judges would show up and we'd play the games. So we got, I think, 15 judges for round 3, which was a big increase. We only had 5 the first year because it was just hard to schedule things and cram it in the second to last day of the year. But yeah, so we play all the games, try to play them at multiple player counts to try and get a good feel for them. And again, we give a lot of feedback to the finalists, score them, and the winner is announced.
Awesome. So that's a lot of work. It sounds like it's not just a matter of, play the game and off you go. But as a judge, and I'm not even a game designer, so I'm not looking at it from a game design point of view. I'm looking at it from a playability side, and even that I find like difficult to give feedback, and you got to give the sandwich, give something nice, give something that needs work, whatever. We want to be upbeat and positive because I do want to see people's games get made if they have the heart and the desire to make them played. So I can only imagine what it's got to be like at the final stages, trying to get these through and really hone in on them. So it's got to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, the final stage is a lot of work. Learning to play any new game is work. You got to sit down with the rule book. It's a very daunting thing. And in a lot of cases, I personally don't learn from the rule book. I have a friend teach me. And that's how I learn a game. It's nice. It's convenient. They already know. With these games, we don't have anyone that knows it. Someone has to learn it. So sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's other judges. The way the contest is designed, and this is in no way a requirement, but just how things work through the video submission process, it tends to favor mid-weight to lighter games. So we're not really getting any 90-minute, 2-hour monster games. We're getting a lot of 45 minutes, maybe an hour. A lot on the shorter side too, like 10, 15-minute party games. So learning isn't very daunting. But taking 5 games that you've never played before, which have rules that may or may not be actually accurate and perfected, can be a lot of work.
Absolutely. So you also seem to have evolved even beyond the contest, because now you're also doing design days and you're doing things like this that are even more hands-on and interactive. What are those about?
So I've been going to Metatopia and Unpub for a couple of years, and I love those events. They're very big and very useful, and I mean, not very far away from me. I can drive to them, but it's still like a 10 to 16-hour drive for me.
Sure.
And there's not really anything of that length in the New England area. Mm-hmm. There's Boston Fig, which is similar-ish, but it's a very different process than more of an open design day like an Unpub or a Protospiel. So we have a lot of meetups. I belong to 2 different meetup groups in eastern Massachusetts. So there's a lot of talk of when are we going to have a design day and have a longer thing. So I actually started the first one with my friend Brian Compter, who helps me run one of the game meetups I work at. And we just decided we would see if there's enough people around that want to pay money to demo their games and enough people that want to play them. And there was barely enough for that first year. So we just covered our costs. And there were definitely some problems running that first year. Mostly the space was a little more expensive than we should have had and a little bigger than we needed, and didn't allow outside food, which became kind of an issue for people. But overall, it was a fun day. People really enjoyed it. The people that brought their games got some great feedback. The people that came to play, a lot of them were from my design group, so I knew a lot of people. But some of them were people I had never met before. Mm-hmm. So it is bringing in new people, and I think it was a great start. I think we had about 44 people show up to that first one. So the second one will be in October on the 17th in Franklin, Massachusetts. So if you're in the southern New England area, or not, some people like to drive. We actually had people come down from Maine for that first one. So
okay. Yeah, imagine if you're in Maine, there's not a lot around. Because, well, there's not a lot around Maine to begin with, but let alone as far as big events like that, because it kind of stops almost in Boston as far as like a lot of those bigger conventions where they could like get a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in Maine, you got to go south for a lot of stuff.
True.
But yeah, so hopefully this one goes well. We already have tables on sale, so it's $25 for a designer table. You get 5 hours to show off any games you want, and get a lot of people to show up and play them. And we get some prize support from publishers, so we can give out games and design materials from the Game Crafter and Print and Play and stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
It sounds great. The last thing that I know that you kind of wanted to bring up is the Pathways Fellowship. And this is something that's, in my experience, is very new, is it not?
Yes, this is very new. Just Ben Beagle just started it, I want to say last month, maybe?
Yeah,
I don't know how long he was thinking of it. But
gotcha.
I was brought in last month. But yeah, if you go to pathwaysfellowship.net, you can see all the people involved. And I don't want to try and name them because I'll mess up their names and forget who some of them are. But basically, Pathways Fellowship is trying to raise money to help designers get to different design conventions. The first one we're working towards is Unpub, which will be in May. So we're raising money for that. We already passed our funding goal for getting people to Unpub, so that's great. And we're working on raising money for the next thing, which
Awesome.
may be Metatopia, although it depends on schedules and how things work out. But we're trying to put together a lot of things for people. So some people struggle with getting to these design conventions for financial reasons. Traveling is expensive. Hotel rooms are expensive. But the other thing is some people just don't know about it. So they might be designing games for decades and just not know these things exist. So we're also trying to raise awareness and bring new people into the design space and help them get there. But on top of just the financial support, we're also setting the designers up with mentors. So the mentors would be more experienced designers in the industry. And while money to pay for a travel and hotel room is a very useful thing, a mentor to help you build your network is invaluable. So if I didn't meet a couple of people early on in my own career, I probably wouldn't be doing as much as I do now. But you meet one person that has 10 friends, then you have 11 friends. So it grows very quickly from there, especially with board games. Everyone wants to help you. But having that first person to really help you navigate those, especially a convention like Unpub, which has thousands of guests and hundreds of designers, it's a very big space. And if you're new to it all, it can be very daunting. So we hope to bring people in, give them a mentor to talk to, and hopefully build their network and help them grow in the community and help the community grow by bringing in new people and new voices that maybe haven't had a chance to get recognized.
That's awesome. That sounds, I think it's great that we can try and hopefully get some more people into the hobby to bring up, let different games get designed, because I think, fresh ideas, that's where the next big hit, I think, is coming from, whether it's with themes or whether it's with mechanics or mechanisms that we don't even know about yet.
Exactly.
That might be sitting on a couch somewhere with some index cards that we don't know about. So that would be awesome if we can help that person out a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's definitely the way the industry is going, as like a lot of people talk about the bubble bursting or things flattening out, but there's a lot of games coming out and a lot of them are the same, and you really need to stand out. And
Right.
the same people doing the same thing is not necessarily going to stand out, but new people doing new things, that's new.
Exactly. And you know what? I think those people who come from the outside have a bigger view, because they might not have any preconceptions, they might only know about Target at this point. So they don't know about, designer game stores or the depth and breadth. So they might have a completely fresh view and perspective. So if we can get them in, we might be able to continue to open these cracks that seem to be widening as we speak. So.
Not knowing the limits is very useful.
Yes, indeed. Awesome. So if you were to give advice to anybody who's kind of either starting out in the design world or in the design space, what are some tools that you can give them or point them to that'll help them kind of get off the ground, maybe get their feet wet, maybe throw something out there and see what happens?
So first off, I have to recommend podcasts. Podcasts are what I started with as soon as I was interested in games. Actually, I didn't listen to podcasts before I started in game design. I was never into all these other popular podcasts. I got into board games. I looked up board game, found some podcasts. Those podcasts talk about other podcasts. Now I think I'm actively listening to something like 30 or 35 podcasts. I listen at triple speed, so I get through about 9 hours worth of podcasts a day. I would say maybe I'm addicted to podcasts, but it's also where I get most of my design ideas.
You're pretty much mainlining them at that point.
Yes. It's a lot of people can't handle it, but it's a lot of fun. But if I go on vacation and stop my commute, I stop listening to podcasts, I stop my design work. Like, I'm just not interested in it. I'll do something else. I'll watch Netflix. But when I'm listening to the podcasts, it gets my creative juices flowing, and I just can't stop designing at that point. I'll have 5 new ideas a day just from listening to them. And they're like, oh, what about pirate games in space? I'm like, oh, I've never played a pirate game in space. Maybe I could make this. So I definitely recommend podcasts. They're free. They're easy. There's a ton of different styles, so they fit what you're looking for. Other than that, especially if you're just starting out, find some people either online or in real space that are also interested. They don't have to be good. They don't have to be experienced. They just have to be interested. Get your friends to start designing with you. If you don't have a local meetup, which Cardboard Edison has a list of design meetups around the world, mostly in America, but all over the world. So check that out. There might be something local. If there's not, start it. It's pretty easy to get a couple people together and just have them play a game. They might be interested. They might make their own game. Then they bring it. Then you have more people. And it just grows naturally, and just be consistent about it.
Awesome. So what would be some of the don'ts? Like, what should you not do if you're very serious about game design?
There's very few things not to do. I would say don't worry about sharing ideas. Don't be a jerk. Just be nice to people in general. I think that's good in any industry. But especially nowadays, social media remembers what you say, and people will see it. So things can go very bad very fast if you're not a good person. So be a good person. Help other people. So yeah, just don't be afraid and take that first step.
Awesome. And Chris, thank you so much for being on. If people want to find you, find the Board Game Workshop, find more about Pathways, what would be the best way to do that?
So you can find me on Twitter all the time. My personal Twitter is @BlueCubeBGS. If you want to follow the show, it's the BG Workshop, or @the BG Workshop on Twitter. You can go to theboardgameworkshop.com. That has info about the podcast, the design day, the contest. If you want to learn more about Pathways, go to pathwaysfellowship.net, and that has all the information there. But yeah, find me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter pretty much constantly, so I can answer any questions there.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun, sir. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about the process.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, there's cool stuff I didn't even know about. So we learned something today, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed that. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on.
Thank you.
No worries. Dan, thanks for pouring a lovely beer. I think I'm going to finish this, and we're going to call it a night. So be sure to mind the scissors the next time you make a game when you game all night.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. I hope you got to enjoy getting to know the guest just as much as I did. Now, if you like the show, please subscribe below so that you can know when we drop new episodes. We are here in season 3, and we are asking for a little bit of support this year. And all I need from you is one of two things. If you can help us out on Patreon, just $1 or $2 goes a very long way and will help make sure that I can continue to make the show. And if you can't afford that, that's fine. I love seeing retweets. I like to see people out there telling other people about the show whenever possible. So be sure to tell your friends. And of course, if you have thoughts or ideas about who you'd like to see on the show, drop me a line. I'm happy to have it. And a special thank you to everybody who has supported the show in the past and who has signed up recently. Thank you again so much for your support. We'll see you next time, and be sure to have fun when you game all night.
And the octopus